Every house in Britain has a story to tell, but in this series, we're going to uncover the secret life of just one. A Victorian house here in Leeds, a city whose factories and workshops in the 19th century made Britain into an industrial superpower. Delving into the archives, I'll uncover the hidden histories of the residents of this house to tell epic stories that span 150 years. Stories of love and scandal, grief and glamour, and fortunes made and lost. His left arm had been cut off. The poor fellow died in 5 minutes. He has a nude woman tattooed on the inside of his left forearm.
He was this lad from Leeds, suddenly mixing with the most swish people in the universe.
This looks really suspicious.
It's dodgy, isn't it?
The circumstances strongly suggested that she'd been poisoned.
What a time we had here. I'm really emotional right now.
This is the ultimate detective hunt, uncovering lives that weren't recorded in books, but that tell us a new version of our nation's past, an alternative history of Britain contained within the walls of a single house. This is number 5 Grosvenor Mount, a large Victorian house in the Leeds suburb of Headingley. We last left the house when the Lister family lived here in 1931. Now it's time for a new family. Many of the residents who've lived in this house over the decades have left their mark on it, but one resident left their mark quite literally. When we first started investigating this house, the current owners, Jackie and Pete, told us about this. Carved into this wall, out here in the backyard, very neatly, is a name. J. Wood. I want to see if Jackie and Pete know anything else about this piece of graffiti. So, do you guys know why the name J. Wood is carved into a wall in your backyard?
Pete does.
I do, yes.
Well, we think we do.
We think we do, yeah. Maybe 5, 6 years ago, a gentleman came up to me on the street and said, I used to live here. And we had a little chat, and then I invited him in. It was fairly elderly, quite frail, but he did take me into the backyard, where he came up to this stone and said, this is my name, John Wood. But I didn't do it. He said my brother Geoffrey did it to get me into trouble. So Geoffrey did it to get John into trouble. And that's the story we've got.
We tried to find this John Wood, who today would be in his 90s, but it's so common a name that we couldn't locate him. So I'm going to Leeds Central Library to see what records they hold about his family. The logical place to start is the electoral rolls and the 1939 register, which lists households in England and Wales at the start of the Second World War. So living at 5 Grosvenor Mount is John Wood and his wife Henrietta, who sometimes goes by the name Rita, and their sons John Jr., who's 9, and Geoffrey, who's 15. Now, the 1939 register tells us a bit more about John Wood Sr. It tells us he was born in 1896, so he's 43 when the register's taken, and it gives us his profession as biscuit traveller, which sounds really strange, but what it means is that he sells biscuits on behalf of the biscuit companies wholesale to shopkeepers. So, we have in our house a fairly middle-class family with our 2 boys, Geoffrey and John, listed as being at school. Records show that their parents, John and Rita, had been married for 16 years. The 1939 register also sheds more light on what John Sr. was doing at that precise moment in time. Beside his profession, it also tells us that he was an ARP warden. Now, in 1939, when this register was taken, everybody in Britain knew that those 3 letters, ARP, stood for Air Raid Precaution. John Wood and his family had been living at number 5 for 3 years when Britain and Germany went to war in September 1939. Even before war had broken out, Germany had been building up its air force. And the danger of aerial bombardment was very real. A tiny number of British civilians had died in air raids during World War I, but in 1939, Germany's bomber fleet posed a far greater risk to Britain's cities and the millions who lived in them. And John Wood was one of 1.4 million volunteers who joined the ARP, a civil defence force that was trained to respond to air raids. I'm meeting with Dr. Henry Irving to find out what John's duties in the ARP were.
People like John, they were responsible for making sure that people had blacked out their windows, that no lights were showing. And that was a really important part of their job. And most of the wardens, they were working in their own neighbourhoods, so people would know them. They had to be respected. They had to have that sort of sense of responsibility.
The aim of the blackout was to minimise light on the ground that could unintentionally lead the German bombers to their targets. ARP wardens, like John, could enforce fines on those who broke the rules.
So John would have had a team that he worked with closely, and each night they would assemble at a warden's post, and then from there they would be responsible for responding to any incidents. So it may be that you would need the fire service to put out a fire. It may be that you need a rescue squad if there's somebody trapped in rubble. So they're relaying all of that information back to the Civil Defence Headquarters and just ensuring that the response is as efficient as it could be.
I mean, this is a very serious job, and this is a very serious moment. And from May, June 1940, when Britain's allies, France, the Netherlands, Belgium, start to be knocked out of the war, this suddenly is getting closer to home as well.
Yes, there were raids from the summer of 1940 onwards.
Leeds was a centre for the manufacturing of aircraft, tanks and ammunition for the Allied war effort, making the city a target for the Luftwaffe.
These are maps of Leeds from the Second World War. They were printed around 1940, but these maps are German maps. And what they show are all of the strategic targets identified by the German Air Force in Leeds. And each of these little symbols represent a type of target. So here are the city's railway stations. Here's the symbol for the gasworks. And this symbol, which is all across the centre of Leeds, that is the symbol for a textile works. Textile, of course, being Leeds' great industry. Some of these, which are targets for the German Air Force, are literally a couple of 100 metres away from our house at Grosvenor Mount. John Wood's first serious test as an ARP warden came on the 14th of March, 1941, when German planes were spotted heading towards the city. We think Rita would have taken their boys, Geoffrey and John, into the basement to shelter from the raid. If John Wood was on duty on the night of the raid, it would have been up to him and the other ARP wardens to sound the siren. They then would have rushed out and patrolled the area to get anyone who was out on the streets to take cover. On one night, 40 German aircraft dropped 25 tons of bombs. The full scale of the damage was revealed the next morning. 65 people had been killed, 258 injured, and thousands of buildings had been damaged. The war had arrived at the Woods' doorstep. But for John and Rita, there was another worry. Their teenage son, Geoffrey, was now approaching the age at which he could see active service.
what we found were these documents, and what they tell us is that in 1941, when he was still just 17 years old, he joined the Merchant Navy. And this is his National Registration Identity Card. There's a photograph of him looking understandably very serious, older than just 17, and amazingly, it also gives us his fingerprints. The Merchant Navy were a force of 185,000 men who crewed the ships that kept the UK supplied with arms, food, and fuel. Many supplies came from America, and on average took 17 days to sail to the UK, making the Merchant Navy an obvious target for the German U-boats who would lie in wait and attack. To cross to the UK, merchant ships were escorted by the Navy, forming an Atlantic convoy. Geoffrey's first voyage left from Liverpool, where I've come to meet naval historian Harry Bennett.
Geoffrey Wood's 17 when he joins the Merchant Navy. Now, that's not the youngest you could join, is it?
No, I mean, you'll find kids as young as 14. So there's a real tradition of quite young kids joining as deck apprentices, which is what Geoffrey was. He's an apprentice deck officer and ultimately rises to the level of third mate, third officer.
So third mate, third officer, that means he's fourth in the line of command on the ship.
Yeah. Now, that's a lot of pressure for being that young.
And where does he go? What does his records tell us?
Well, if you look here, you begin to see some of the voyages that he actually makes.
So Confidence is the first ship he's on.
Yeah, British Confidence is the first ship that you can see.
British Courage, British Promise, British Industry. They all have the same name because it's the same company, I presume.
It's British Tankers. Now, British Tankers is an interesting company. They're part of what ultimately becomes British Petroleum. And these are very good ships, but the risk is enormous.
So there's a trip here to Abadan.
Yeah.
In the Middle East.
Middle East.
A place where the oil
Yeah.
obviously is dug out of
Yeah.
the ground. Glasgow,
Yeah.
Birkenhead, so
Yeah.
here on the Mersey. And the moment he leaves somewhere like the Mersey and heads out to sea, he's in the world where the U-boats are operating.
Absolutely. There are ships being lost just beyond the mouth of the Mersey. So those people on tankers especially are running massive risks, and they know it.
For his parents, John and Rita, back in our house, it must have been agonizing, waiting for the news of their son. Would the next ship targeted by the U-boats be Geoffrey's? Searching the archives, we came across further news of the family. We've been looking in the archive, trying to find out more about Geoffrey Wood. And this is the next document we found relating to the Wood family, and it is a death notice. It appeared in one of the Leeds newspapers, and it's dated May 14th, 1944. And it reads, John William, beloved husband of Rita Wood of 5 Grosvenor Mount, Leeds. So it's John Wood, the father in Leeds, not Geoffrey Wood, the son out on the ships of the Atlantic convoys, who has died. John died, aged just 48, of hyperphagia, a form of high blood pressure. It's unlikely that Geoffrey would have learned of his father's death until his ship docked in the UK many weeks later. And he wouldn't have been able to return to Leeds for long to console his mother. As the war continued, the Merchant Navy needed as many men as possible.
He joins the Merchant Navy in 41 and seems to get through all of these journeys safely.
Yeah, until 1945. And in 1945, he's on a ship called the British Freedom. On the 12th of January 1945, British Freedom sets sail from Boston, Massachusetts, and she's going to Halifax, Nova Scotia, with a cargo of heavy fuel oil for the United States Navy. And As they're coming into Halifax Harbour on the 14th of January, things begin to go dramatically wrong. And I've got here a copy of the Admiralty report. Approximately 3.5 miles southeast of Timbuktu Head, British Freedom was struck by a torpedo. A column of water was thrown about 90 feet into the air by the explosion. The engine room was flooded. The crew were mustered to boat stations. So at that point, the order is given to abandon ship. And it's at this point that Geoffrey is asked to take command of one of the lifeboats as they try to get the crew away. So there they are in January off the coast of Nova Scotia, as around them a convoy battle is beginning to grow in intensity.
Geoffrey's ship had been part of a convoy of 18. 2 other vessels were also hit and their crews forced to abandon ship. Over 100 men, including 20-year-old Geoffrey, were now adrift in sub-zero temperatures.
If they're not picked up, they're in serious trouble.
They are indeed.
Eight sailors in the convoy lost their lives that day. But Geoffrey's lifeboat was picked up by a Canadian minesweeper and the survivors taken to shore.
Geoffrey's survived without incident up until this moment. Now he's been torpedoed. Does he call it a day?
No, he carries on. He carries on in a profession which I suspect he probably dearly loved. Because clearly he was well fitted for it, as I can see. You know, the fact that he's risen from being a deck apprentice to a 3rd officer seems a very competent individual.
In September 1945, 8 months after Geoffrey had been torpedoed, the war finally came to an end. By then, Geoffrey was married to Judith, who served in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. The couple later moved to London, leaving his brother John and mother Rita at number 5.
Rita ended the war a widow. She was now alone, and she was also still responsible for bringing up her younger son, John, who was still a boy of just 14.
We can't find any evidence that Rita had a salaried job, but the electoral roll gives us a clue as to how she made a living. From 1945 onwards, the rolls show a fast turnover of residents coming and going at number 5. And this suggests that Rita was renting out rooms. And this ghost of a lock suggests that the attic became a flat. Professor Deborah Sugg-Ryan is visiting a house that shows us how the attic might have been arranged.
I think what was happening to Rita's home at this time must have had quite a profound effect on her. This is the house in which she had her married life. She brought up her 2 boys as a middle-class woman, and now she's given up half of her home to tenants.
The attic area at number 5 is small, so Rita would have needed to acquire items that didn't take up too much space.
So if I look around the kitchen here, I think this room would have been the biggest challenge to Rita. The thing I think that makes the kitchen work is the freestanding kitchen cabinet. They give you a larder space and they give you a work surface to work on as well. These kitchen cabinets had a cupboard at the bottom, typically lined with tin or lead, and this is where you kept your meat and things you wanted to keep cool. Aside from the kitchen, I think the real challenge for Rita is to provide washing facilities for her tenants. She's going to have to give over her kitchen and the use of her mangle, the use of the washing line, to her tenants once a week. If you've been used to having your home to yourself, that's going to feel quite intrusive and a bit of an invasion of your privacy, and I think create quite a kind of sense of loss for the kind of life that Rita had had before when her husband was still alive.
The electoral roll shows that various tenants come and go, but for a few years, the names of two women remain constant.
In 1946, there's a woman called Margaret Jenks and another called Violet Buchanan living together in our house. Now, it's not immediately obvious how they're connected or whether they're related and why it is that they've come to be living together at 5 Grosvenor Mount.
A further search of the local newspapers turns up a new bit of information.
In June 1946, this advertisement appears in the Yorkshire Post. It's in the miscellaneous items wanted listings, and it says, Doll's Pram wanted, state price, Buchanan, 5 Grosvenor Mount. So, it looks very clear that there is a young child living at the house.
A search of Buchanan babies born in Leeds around this time brings up 7 possible candidates.
We ordered up all of these birth certificates, and this one reveals who the baby is. It's Fiona Jane Buchanan.
This baby was born in 1946, so she'd be in her 70s today. Using public records, we've found Fiona Buchanan, who today goes by her middle name, Jane. And this is the first time she's been here since she was a baby.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
So the doll's pram in that advertisement, was that for you?
No, that was my sister.
That was for your sister. So this is your sister, and
It is.
It was for her. Oh, so that's here. That's right here.
Yeah. And that's my sister by the wall with her beloved Quacky duck. And that's my sister with Quacky now.
Wow. The duck has survived.
She was sorry she couldn't be here, but you got a picture of her instead.
Did she put Quacky Duck in there rather
I
than a
expect
doll?
so. She probably put me in it as well, I think.
Jane lived here with her sister Jenny and mother Violet from 1946 to 47. And Jane tells us that the other woman on the register, Margaret Jenks, was her aunt. The family were living here at a moment in which Britain was reeling from the emotional and economic fallout of the war. But another challenge was to come.
So you're here for the terrible winter of 47 as a baby?
Yes.
And you survived it?
I did. And even my mother breaking up a chair to put on the fire because they couldn't get any coal and fuel to keep us warm.
In the winter of 1947, temperatures dropped to as low as -21. And a coal shortage meant that people struggled to heat their homes and places of work. For Jane's mother, this must have been a huge worry.
Should I look in the front room? You probably spent quite a lot of the winter of 1947 in your pram, trying to keep warm.
Trying to keep warm.
Jane's mother was bringing up her daughters at the height of post-war austerity. And in those lean years, the health of the next generation was a priority for the government.
After the Second World War, the government was really keen to secure the future of children, so they were the next generation. What's interesting about the children's ration book is on the back there are a couple of extra items that wouldn't have been on the adults one. One of which is orange juice. Obviously it's important to get their vitamins. And the other one, which sounds pretty horrible, is cod liver oil. And this would have been in liquid form, and they would have been having, say, a teaspoon or a tablespoon per day, depending on their age. And I think this was part of a wider initiative to make the future brighter for children.
For families, rationing wasn't the only hangover of the war. Nearly 3 million men had joined the army, and many were still on active service.
Where was your father?
He was on the way out to India when I was born, and he was in India for 2 years in the army. That's why it was so nice for my mother to share here with her sister, because being alone with 2 small babies, you know, was not much fun.
And I suppose, you know, in those years after the war, lots of people moving around, it was quite normal for people to find new arrangements, ways of making their families work.
Yes, yes.
What's your earliest memory of this house?
Sitting in my pram in the garden and walking back up up the path, coming here and looking at it, I got those shivers down my back. It was quite moving, really. I don't know why that sounds silly, doesn't it? But it was. It was a bit of a homecoming.
In 1947, Jane, her sister, and mother Violet moved out of number 5. Jane's father had returned from India, and the family now moved with him to his next posting, leaving Rita on the hunt for new tenants. A Violet Curran arrives in 1948, but she stays just a year. The next names that appear are Michael and Penelope Tasker. She's also referred to in the records as Poppy.
In 1949, Poppy and Michael Tasker move into the house, and we searched for them in the local press, and we found this article from the Yorkshire Post, and what it contains is an announcement of their marriage. Now, they get married in Christchurch in Naples, in southern Italy. It tells us that Michael is Captain Michael Tasker, and he's in the London Irish Rifles, and his bride is Penelope Vadouris of Sacherio Plastion in Greece.
We've scoured the maps for a place called Sacherio Plastion, but strangely found nothing.
We've ordered up their marriage certificate, and it tells us a little bit more about them. Michael was 26 when they got married. Poppy was 22. As we know, he was a captain in the army. She was working as a clerk. They get married in March 1946. So this is a couple who met during the war or in the months just after the war, like hundreds of thousands of couples. But what this doesn't explain is why an army captain from Yorkshire and a woman from Greece are getting married in southern Italy.
It's an intriguing set of circumstances. And to try and find out why Poppy left her home country, we've hired a local researcher in Greece.
Gregory, in the announcement of the marriage in the newspapers, it gives a place of birth as Sacheroplastion. I'm sure that's a terrible pronunciation. What's going on there?
Right, so Sacharoplastio is not even a place. In Greek, it means something entirely different. It means sweet shop. And I've sent you this envelope with some of the documents that I discovered. And if you open it, you should see a page of a 1934 business directory in Greek. You can see a sweet shop listed, and the owner is Dionysios Vorderis, Poppy's father.
So she wasn't born in a sweet shop, but her parents did run a shop. So somehow, when they came to put the notice in the newspaper of their marriage, there's been a pretty major translation error.
Exactly.
Poppy's actual place of birth is a town called Aio, 2 hours from Athens.
And the family, they also owned a canning factory. And there is another image, a rare image of Poppy's father there. They're making this special sweet we have in Greece called spoon sweets.
So this is a middle-class family with some wealth. Gregory, you've contacted people in the town that Poppy was from. Did anyone remember her or her family?
Although the Warden family was very well known in Aegio, no one had heard or remembered Poppy. It's a turbulent time, it's wartime, and a lot of these records were not kept or preserved.
Poppy would have been a young woman when the Germans and Italians invaded Greece. And she would have lived through a brutal occupation that lasted almost 4 years. During Gregory's research, he also discovered that Poppy's father died in September 1944, and there's a rumour that he was killed by the Greek communists. I'm meeting with Professor Roderick Beaton in the Greek Orthodox Church here in Leeds to try and understand what was happening in Greece at that time, and if those events might have set Poppy on a path that brought her to Grosvenor Mount.
Poppy's father dies in 1944. What's happening in that town at that moment?
Well, absolute chaos. The information we have is that he died in September 1944. Now, that's the very time when Germany is losing the war and German troops are preparing to leave Greece. The Greek rival resistance movements are positioning themselves all to try to take over and grab as much territory, as much local power as they can. And on the one side, you've got the well-organized communist resistance. On the other hand, you've got a smaller resistance group which is manned by former army officers associated with the exiled monarchy. And the communists basically attack those people. They try to wipe them out before the Germans have gone, so that the communists are in complete control afterwards.
Well-off and middle class, Poppy and her family were an obvious target for the communists.
Poppy's father is associated in communist eyes with, what they call the monarcho-fascist, capitalist enemy. So he's either caught in crossfire, he could have been targeted and executed, we don't know. But the timing does suggest that something pretty horrible happened to him shortly before the Germans left.
The records in Greece don't tell us what happened to the family. But given her experiences, it is understandable that Poppy might have felt in danger and may have wanted to leave Greece. Many of the documents from this time have been lost or destroyed, so we can't pinpoint how or why Poppy ended up in Italy. But Michael Tasker's military records place him in Naples from January 1945, working at a camp for the repatriation of British soldiers. It must have been around that time that he met Poppy. The records also reveal that when the Taskers moved to Leeds, they had children, a daughter called Audrey, and then, when they were in our house, a boy called John. Today, John would be in his 60s, so we searched for a John Tasker of around that age. And we found him, not in the UK, but in America.
John, hi.
Hey, how are you?
So I'm going to open this bundle of photographs that you've kindly sent.
Wonderful.
So this, I'm taking, must be your father.
Oh, yes, that's my father, looking handsome.
So he's a Yorkshireman. He marries a woman from Greece. Were they alike? Were they similar? Were they very different?
I think that they were very different. My father was a very, very quiet man, very British in that sense. And my mother was a very effervescent, outgoing, emotional woman and who loved life.
Do you know how your parents met in all of that chaos of the Second World War?
There's a number of stories. The one I was told and I liked the best, when the Germans invaded Greece, she ended up being in an internment camp. There was a mass breakout, and she worked her way to a boat and to the Mediterranean Ocean. The boat sank, and a British ship came along and saved her and took her to Italy. I believe, or I would like to believe, that his ship picked her up, and the love affair began at that time.
Poppy was one of just 344 Greek war brides to come to Britain. And her new life in Leeds must have been a huge culture shock. We learned that Michael returned to university to finish his law degree, while Poppy brought up their two children, Audrey and John, here at Grosvenor Mount. This was John's first home.
Okay, so John, here's the guided tour by Zoom. Let me take you in.
All right. Well, I can tell you about those stairs. I definitely went down the banister, sliding, often. And I'm not sure if that's the same railing, but I did stick my head through it, and they had to saw me out. If I went in easy, it came out difficult. And to this day, I can still hear the saw.
Although John has happy memories of number 5, his Greek mother felt differently.
It was difficult because the British were very proper. And I think my mother kind of had to switch gears and tone down her personality to fit in. Obviously, she doesn't have her family with her, but she does discover that part of her family has moved to New York. And so 8 years later, we came to America, and I believe she blossomed then. There ended up being at least 10, 11, 12 of the brothers and sisters there, so it was a large community.
In 1955, Michael, Poppy, Audrey and John Tasker were part of a post-war wave of mass emigration to North America. In the 1950s, 300,000 British people left for the United States. When the Taskers moved to New York, they eventually settled in Queens, near Poppy's Greek family.
Everyone spoke Greek. I understood more than I was able to speak. The family were Greek Orthodox. They were very religious. They upheld all the Greek holidays. And a lot of partying, a lot of cigars and card games when I was a young person, going from house to house, which we did all the time.
Michael went into finance and worked for various banks. Poppy looked after her family and helped out with the family's businesses until she died in 1967.
This is a photograph of Poppy and Michael at a party in America in the 1960s. So this is 20 years after the start of the war and the series of calamities in which Poppy lost everything. By this point in her life, she's been a refugee who then found a British husband and moved to Britain. And then she becomes an immigrant moving to the United States. And there she finally reconnects with her family. And there she is finally happy, as I think you can see from this photograph. And Michael himself had been through his own remarkable transitions. He's been a soldier, he's been a lawyer, and then this Yorkshireman becomes an American, a member of a big, extended Greek-American family. They are like millions of people whose lives were turned upside down by the war and who ended up, in a way, leading these multiple lives with new beginnings in new places.
After the Taskers, more tenants continued to come and go. Then, in 1959, the house was sold. The deeds tell us that a married couple, Alan and Edith Weir, bought number 5 for $1,400. £150, around £34,000 in today's money. The Weirs are a middle-aged couple. From their birth certificates, we can see that Alan is 48 and originally from Glasgow. He's the son of an iron foundry draftsman. Edith is 50 and the daughter of a baker. She's from Leeds.
Looking at their marriage certificate, which is from 1933, it tells us that Alan is a journalist and Edith is an editor's secretary. So it looks like both of them work in the world of newspapers.
We turned to the newspaper archive to find out what kind of stories Alan wrote. So Alan is a film critic at the Yorkshire Post. That's one of the most prestigious local newspapers in the country. It's a paper that calls itself Yorkshire's national newspaper and that reports on international and national news, not just local stories. When Alan worked at the Post, it was on Albion Street in the city centre, just under 2 miles from Grosvenor Mount.
The information flowing back from the field has to be sifted, written up and edited, ready for the printers. The editorial office is a scene of round-the-clock activity.
Edith, meanwhile, worked as secretary to the paper's legendary editor, Linton Andrews.
It's clear that Linton Andrews and Edith had a very strong working relationship. And we know this because when Linton Andrews came to write his autobiography in 1964, he dedicated it to Edith. He even explains how they came to be working together. He says that he asked the management one day to get me a good shorthand typist, but the awkward working hours, midday till mid-evening, did not attract many applicants. Then one day, a shy girl of 14 came up to help me with some letters. She proved extremely efficient. I asked whether she could stay my assistant. She could and did. I count myself, he says, extremely fortunate to have had such a hard-working, clear-minded and good-tempered colleague all of these years, and to have her still as my secretary.
It's clear that both Edith and Alan were dedicated to their work. The Weirs didn't have any children, but they did have a nephew, Roger Boys, who also lived in Grosvenor Mount in 1967 with his wife, Pat.
Roger.
David.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too, and it's good to be back.
Brilliant. And you have some photographs of their time here in the house?
I do indeed, yes. There indeed is Edith sitting on the rockery.
Ah. So she's sitting about there?
Absolutely.
With the house above her?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Roger also has a photo of Edith as a young woman.
What was she like?
She was a strong personality. She was forceful. She graduated from typing school at the ripe age of 14, because that's how it was in 1923. She decided that the most interesting offices in Leeds would be a newspaper office.
Even at 14, she was looking for things that were interesting.
Yeah.
But it shows that she wanted to further her education in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. These are people who would have gone to university by the 1960s or 70s. She certainly made the best of what opportunities were available to someone in her position in the early 20s.
And what was he like?
They were both strong personalities. He was Scots Presbyterian in background. And, of course, they were absolutely fascinating because they worked on newspapers and they knew very interesting people.
Should we have a look inside?
Let's have a look inside.
Let's do that, after you. Let me give you this back.
Life at Number 5 was a far cry from Edith's humble beginnings as a baker's daughter. And Britain was finally coming out of its post-war austerity. Alan and Edith were now able to pursue interests in travel, culture and the arts.
Oh, Jackie and Pete still have the chandelier. Edith would be pleased at that. That was shipped over from Venice.
Oh, really?
That's right, specifically to go there. And it's a beggar to get the thing down in order to clean it. It's interesting that it still fits in with the scheme of things, I guess.
So signs of their renovation and their personality are still in this house?
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
And remarkably, we've found Edith featured in a television documentary in her capacity as Honorary Secretary of the Bronte Society.
Mrs. Weir, what's your favourite among the Brontes? Your favourite of their works, or of the thing that interests you most?
Oh, without question, Wuthering Heights and Emily's poems. It must be well over 50 years now since I first read Wuthering Heights, and shall probably be reading them on my deathbed.
You find that movie that important?
Yes, I do.
You can easily imagine her in a busy newspaper newsroom. But I think you also have to remember that this is a woman who, outside of work, is chairing an organisation. She's passionate and knowledgeable about its subject, so knowledgeable that she's able to discuss it in a television interview. And therefore, I do think you can speculate as to whether this is a woman who might have been capable of doing more, a woman who might not have been fully intellectually satisfied with her role as an assistant to a newspaper editor.
It was a sentiment that was echoed by her boss, Linton Andrews. He wrote, "I suspect you often must have wished to be a journalist on your own. Your feeling for news, your clear, well-stored mind would have ensured success." Edith may not have been able to reach her full potential, but she clearly had an active intellectual life and a leading role at the Bronte Society.
This tribute to Edith also tells us that after 20 years of devoted service, she was stepping down from her role at the Bronte Society. And it explains that her resignation has been given with great sorrow. But it explains that the reason for her resignation is the continued severe illness of her husband that must now claim all her care and attention, so that she will no longer have any time for activities outside her home.
Alan had dementia, and Edith nursed him for 2 years before he died on Christmas Day 1970. She was left alone in 5 Grosvenor Mount, where she continued to live through the 1970s and 80s, a time of great change in Leeds. Edith would have witnessed the decline of the manufacturing industries, textiles, printing, engineering, and chemicals, the industries that had given Leeds its wealth. By 1983, over 300,000 people were unemployed in Yorkshire. Roger and his wife Pat moved a few doors down into number 11 and frequently saw Edith, who was now in her 70s.
Well, her sight started to go, and that was awful, because the one thing that she loved to do was read. She didn't have interest in anything else. She couldn't see to read.
I spent a lot of time sitting in her chair, watching television, and she just became frail gradually.
After a fall down the stairs at Christmas in 1993, Edith decided to sell 5 Grosvenor Mount. She'd lived here for over 30 years. Edith died in 2002, aged 92. In 1995, the house was sold to Jackie and Pete, the current owners. Jackie was then an accountant, and Pete was working as a lecturer at Leeds University. They moved in with their 5-year-old son Joe and 3-year-old daughter Emily. But in 1998, Jackie got the opportunity to work in Hong Kong. and the house was rented out to students and young professionals. In the 1990s, more school leavers than ever before were entering higher education. The number of students in Leeds doubled. Wendy Bowley was one of them. She came here to study psychology and saw an advertisement for a room in the house at a local supermarket.
I came to university at 21, so I was technically a mature student. I got in on one A-level that I'd done at evening school and an interview.
What had you been doing in the years between school and going to university?
I left school at 16. Coming from a very working class background, there were no aspirations for me to do anything other than kind of leave school, get a job. So what I actually did do was go to secretarial college. That was very much where I was steered to go and become a secretary.
Why did you choose Leeds?
I chose Leeds because in the absence of any other direction, when I'd got my form in front of me, I put the 4 places that I most wanted to go clubbing. So that was Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool and Birmingham, I think it was.
So it was based on where the good nightclubs were?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first got here, it was very kind of traditional, northern, urban city. There wasn't much in the city centre, but over time, you know, bars and clubs opened up. And yeah, it became a really amazing place to go out.
It did feel, back in the 1990s, that Leeds was changing. There was a lot more money in the city, and a building boom began that threw up big apartment blocks in the city centre, and it converted many of the city's old textile factories into yet more housing. And I was here in Leeds to witness the beginnings of this boom back in the 1990s, because I moved here to study journalism. And just like Wendy, I lived in a big shared house not far from Grosvenor Mount.
Investment was sunk into the city to regenerate it. A resurgent Leeds was entering a new chapter in its history. And at number 5, there was also a new start for Wendy.
Wow, that's amazing. My bed was here so I could stand on it and look out. I think when I used to look out of this window, it was just a feeling of just hope and inspiration, and just there's a whole world out there that actually I can do anything.
Different housemates came and went over the years, but they've all kept in touch. This is the first time they've been back for over 15 years.
Oh, Josh and Liz and Alice.
I am David.
It's great to see the house again, yeah.
So more of your flatmates?
This is just the weirdest thing. I never imagined I'd be back here.
Drinks up here, so please.
Wow. I'm really emotional right now. What a time we had here. So I guess my story that goes along with this house is that I did fitness training and I loved it, but I knew it wasn't a job for life. But when I moved in here, we've got Jeanette who was doing a doctorate, we've got Alice who was training to be a teacher, there was Chris doing a master's, and there was me with no confidence in terms of the academic world, but I'd always had ambitions really to do further education, just not the confidence to do it. And this house and the people in it, I dare say, gave me that confidence. This is where I started my degree. I'm now a dietitian for the NHS who works in mental health.
We all went through various life events during our time in the house. Relationships came and went, and the house was a kind of constant.
I met Jeanette, who's now my wife, at a party here. My life would be completely different if I'd never been to this house.
For the students who lived at 5 Grosvenor Mount in the 1990s, this house and the city of Leeds was a place of transformations. It was where they met their future partners, where they embarked upon careers or training that would shape the rest of their lives. And in those years, this house was an overwhelmingly positive place. And it is almost hard to believe that residents of the same house just 4-5 decades earlier were going through the war and the Blitz and then the rationing and the austerity that followed. It is as if those two historical eras belong in different worlds. But the parties had to come to an end. In 2005, the current owners, Jackie and Pete, along with their children, moved back from Hong Kong. Now I'm ready to bring them up to date with our investigation into the people and the stories of Number 5 Grosvenor Mount. Number 5 was home to William Bruce, a lawyer who campaigned for 2 men that he felt had been unjustly given the death penalty.
Wow. Fine-looking gentleman.
The Nicholsons were a building dynasty who transformed Leeds.
Gosh, County Arcade. I used to go in there as a little girl.
Committed pacifists, Mary Lucy and William Whiting, once called this house their home. He's campaigning in 1901 about the Anglo-Boer War.
Yeah.
And he's down in Leeds and doing demonstrations and campaigning.
I love that.
Yeah,
so he might have made up a placard in the basement.
And May Bendit, who ran a nursery school at Number 5. Over its 170 years, Number 5 has been home to over 130 people, who have all, in some way, left their mark on this house and on their times. Now that you've seen these faces and sort of met these former residents, how does it feel? What's your relationship to the house?
The interest in the city only grows when you understand the connections these people had, especially the Nicholsons.
I'd be quite happy to have their photos on my wall and remember that they lived here. I think there are some people who lived here to be very proud of. On the whole, a very positive group of people who were active in their community. I would hate for it to have been full of people who just sat back and said, nothing to do with me.
It was in this front room that our residents spent evenings keeping warm and talking about the events of the day. In this dining room, families ate together and discussed their futures. In this bedroom, women who lived in the house gave birth to their children. And from the upstairs window, one former resident looked out and dreamed of heading off to sea and travelling the world. The story of 5 Grosvenor Mount is not just the story of the people who've lived behind that front door, it's also the story of the many thousands of people that they've interacted with as employers and business owners, as social reformers and as journalists, as the builders of great buildings, as criminals, and as men and women who fought in 2 world wars. That collective story is the story of Leeds, but it's not a story with an ending, because eventually new residents will arrive here and add their stories to the longer history of this house, and they will leave behind traces for future generations to uncover.